If you're a startup, you move fast. You're usually a very small team. You have a couple of developers, maybe only one, and things just seem to move at a very fast pace. But what often happens when you've had some success and you're starting to grow your MRR is that things can start to feel very slow with your dev team, with your product team. Your product stops evolving. I talk to a lot of SaaS founders who go through the same issue where they go, over time, it starts to feel very slow. And what I'm going to do on this episode is I'm going to talk through why engineering teams slow down as a company grows, as a SaaS company grows, and then what are some ways to get out of it, and how do you start to get back to those startup roots and start moving a lot faster. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and also hit the bell icon so you can get notifications when new videos come up, because YouTube always doesn't recommend. You can also subscribe to my newsletter by clicking the link to my website, kyleracki.com, to get weekly content delivered to your inbox about how to find product market fit if you're starting a SaaS business. So what happens when you're in the early days is you're building fast and you're iterating very quickly based on customer feedback. And more often than not, engineers are wearing a lot of hats, talking to customers every day, talking to the CEO every day, and things are very connected. They're also writing code very quickly. They don't have a lot of legacy to worry about. They don't have a lot of scale to worry about. So you can build and ship in very, very tight, short cycles. And that is how companies find product market fit in the first place. Because if they didn't operate that way, they would never find product market fit, and thus they would never have the luxury of having scaling problems or challenges. But what often happens is that once you've had some success and your team is growing and your customer base is growing, now all of a sudden you have to worry about legacy, because developers leave over time, new ones come in, they don't always know how everything's put together. They might say, oh, the past dev team built this the wrong way, or it wasn't. Now there's new frameworks that are more modern, that are easier to build on. And then there's also just the challenge of scaling a database, of scaling infrastructure, doing things differently with 10,000 customers or 100,000 or 1,000,000 customers than you would have with 0 or 1 customer. The other challenge is that as the company grows and finds success, engineering, usually will spend less time with customers because now there's a dedicated customer support team. And now, by necessity, before they might have had to do some customer conversations or some support, now there's a team that handles that so they can just focus on the coding. That all sounds great in theory, but what happens over time, over years in practice, is that engineering can become disconnected from what the customers need. And so they, just like natural human nature, people are going to be focused on their problems and what issues they face. And so your engineering team can get very, very bogged down and focused on, scaling issues, infrastructure issues, platform security, all things that are important, all things that are needed. But what happens is that if we're not anchoring what we're doing based on what does the market need? What are our competitors doing better than us? Where do we need to shine? Where do we need to double down? If we're not focused on that, then over time, what you can become is a bit of a laggard product, a stagnated product that, now there's newer tools that are way better than this old thing, and you don't want to find yourself in that position. Another symptom of this problem is that sometimes there can become a divide or a disconnect in your organization where your support team or your sales team can feel like the product engineering team doesn't really know what customers want, care necessarily what customers want. That's their perception. And so it can create this divide and this unhealthy friction between the teams. When it comes to how do we get more, not just productivity out of our engineering team, but how do we make sure that what they're building is actually the right thing, that it's stuff that our customers care about and that's going to move our business forward. David Cancel, if you haven't heard of him, he's an incredibly smart founder, entrepreneur. He's helped build HubSpot. He created the company Drift, where he was founder and CEO for many years. Brilliant product mind, probably maybe one of the best product leaders. He has a book called Hypergrowth. That's just a very small book that he wrote, and it's really about how to build product teams and how to build great products that scale. And one thing that I love that he says in this book is that, when it gets to measuring the output or the the outcomes of an engineering team or a product team, we can get very focused on like granular metrics or, cycle time or, output, throughput metrics, and all that stuff maybe is good to measure. But what I love is that he focuses on really two key metrics, which is how often do we ship to production? And he pushes for, multiple times a day that we're shipping. If you try to overscope an engineering project, it can, if it takes 3 months or 6 weeks or 6 months, we've had big projects that take a year or more to really build. And the thing about product is no matter what you do, it's always going to be a bit wrong, right? You're always going to, even if you've tested with prototypes and talked to customers up front, whatever you put out in the world is going to be flawed in some way. So the whole point is, why don't we learn like now what that issue is? Why don't we learn in like 2 days or a week instead of waiting 3 months to find out we were wrong and then having to rebuild or undo a whole bunch of work that we built? Short release cycles mean shorter learning cycle. Ship a little bit, see what customers think. Great thing nowadays, you can put things under feature flag, so you can only put it to a certain percentage of customers, making sure that if you've got a big customer base and you're putting something out into the wild, if there is something wrong with it, or if there's a bug or a really big usability flaw, you're not impacting the whole customer base. And then how often are the engineers having conversations with customers? Are they talking to them every week, multiple times a week? And really, if those two numbers are moving in the right direction, well, then your product is naturally going to get better over time. Customers are going to love the product because engineers are very focused and anchored on customer needs. They're having those conversations. And sometimes what you'll find is an engineer might have a customer conversation where they complain about a bug or this nagging issue that's been bothering them that the engineer maybe heard from CS or saw in like a Jira ticket one time. But now that they're actually having that conversation, they feel the empathy because they're hearing from firsthand how it's impacting a customer's life. And they might even be a really easy bug to fix, and it might not be in their current sprint, but they're just like, you know what? This is like 3 lines of code. I'm just going to fix this now and get it in production. And that's not the end goal of what you want, but it is a nice byproduct of having engineers talking to customers. You'll also find if they're having these conversations, they're more, they guess less at what a customer might want, and they know more because they're like, I talked to Joe or Mary last week, and this is how she uses our product, and this is where she's struggling, versus I think that a customer or a user might like it this way. Well, that's just a guess. So I brought this to my team maybe 4 or 5 months ago to say, this is the new way we're going to do things. We're going to get back to being customer-centric. We're going to make sure that engineers are talking to customers. We're going to get into shorter release cycles. Now, here's the thing. Changing human behavior is really, really hard, okay? Most, if you've ever, say, had a New Year's resolution and said, like, I'm going to start going to the gym, if you haven't been doing it at all, going from 0 to 100 almost never works, right? Habits take time to form. And there's a lot behind that from a psychological standpoint. So one of my favorite psychology frameworks, if you will, is the BJ Fogg behavior model. And if you're in UX design, or if you've ever studied user experience design, you probably know what this is. And the whole idea behind the Fogg behavior model is that if you want to change human behavior, then there's really like an XY axis. And one is motivation and the other one is ease. So the idea is, if I'm going to change the way that I'm behaving, I need to be highly motivated and it has to be easy for me. And then once you have enough of those two factors involved, then it's about like a prompt or a trigger, right? So it might be, I'm highly motivated to get in shape because I have a bodybuilding tournament that I'm going to compete in. And there's a gym right next to my house, so it's easy for me to go there. But then you also need a prompt or a trigger, like maybe it's a text notification every morning or a personal trainer who gets you out of bed. That's the idea in a nutshell. So if we bring it back to engineering and software, having engineers who have maybe never spoken to customers or very rarely ever had a conversation and saying, okay, now you're going to have multiple conversations a week, it's really hard to change that behavior. So what we did was, we looked at, okay, what is the motivation? Can we get them motivated to do it? Explained the importance of it. Sometimes that's not enough because we've had even a couple engineers say, yeah, I think that's a waste of time. I could be spending more time coding instead of talking to somebody. If you don't have believers right away, that's okay. Some people are like excited to, and some other engineers are like not as excited to. That's okay. But here's the thing: you make it clear why it's important. So it's like, hey, even if you don't agree, I still expect this, right? This is the way we're going to operate. We're going to try this, okay? And then the other thing you do is we put together a spreadsheet with everybody's names and a weekly column, and then we basically just put the number of customer conversations they had, and we put that spreadsheet available to the whole company and to the whole team so that everybody could see everybody's name and how many conversations they had. And that increased the motivation because nobody wanted to be the one with the 0 next to their name. The other thing was we made it very easy for them. So talking to customers sounds easy in practice, but when you think about it, like, who do you talk to? How do you get them on a call? Do you email them? Do you set it up? It can be a challenge to do that. And so we didn't want to put that extra burden on the engineering team. Instead, what we did was we created systems for them to easily jump onto calls. So if, say, like a customer success manager had a call with a customer who had some like product issues they wanted to talk about, that we would just create a Slack channel and engineering groups, and we would assign people to a group, and then we would say like, engineering group 3, this call is happening on this date. Here's, thumbs up if you want to attend. CS would add them to the invite. Product manager having a call with a customer, they'd invite some engineers. So we created these systems that made it very easy for them, so they didn't have to think about it. They didn't have to book anything. They literally just had to like click a button or accept an invitation, and they were on a call. And then what we started to do is we started to really like reward the team as a whole when we would see that a huge percentage of them were having these conversations. So one week we hit 100%, sent everybody a pizza just as like, a spiff or a thank you, or a like, hey, this is great, let's keep this up. And then the trigger works because every Friday, we send this link out into the engineering group channel. We say, hey, update the spreadsheet. Let's see where everybody was at for the week. And then everybody can see the number. So motivation, ease to implement, and a trigger is going to start changing behavior. What's not going to work is, bullying, threats, angry CEO, screaming at everybody to do it. That might work for a little bit, but it's going to wear out, and people are just going to, not do it because they see the value. Now, when we started to implement these changes, we saw like almost immediate results. Engineers were talking about customers specifically. Hey, I talked to Mary, I talked to Joe. Here's the issue they had. They were sharing notes. They were having conversations about what mattered to customers. And that was really different than in the past, where maybe all the conversations were very focused on platform, infrastructure, coding, code quality, and things that matter and absolutely are important, but they can't overshadow what matters to customers, because customers ultimately don't care about the underlying technology, and you will go to business very fast trying to scale a technical product that people don't want. That's not important. That doesn't solve their problems. So give this a try. Let me know how it works for you, and would love to hear in the comments, what stood out to you? What are you going to try? Have you experienced these kind of challenges? And I will see you next time with another video just like this.